We have entered chapter 5, and things are starting to get a little bit, creepy. Let's figure out why. Welcome to Chapter by Chapter. Chapter 5 starts by talking about the Secret Guards, which is this group of students led by Ruth, whose mission is to protect Miss Geraldine, one of the guardians, from kidnapping, murder, something terrible happening to her. And it's really not that important because it's made up. What's more important is how this reflection by Kathy about the Secret Guards gives us insight into her, Ruth, their relationship, and Hailsham in general. And the part that I find the most interesting is when they talk about the woods and how they don't know what's going to happen to Miss Geraldine, but if something bad is going to happen, it's going to be because of the woods. So here's a description of them. The woods were at the top of the hill that rose behind Hailsham House. All we could see really was a dark fringe of trees, but I certainly wasn't the only one of my age to feel their presence day and night. When it got bad, it was like they cast a shadow over the whole of Hailsham. All you had to do was turn your head or move towards a window, and there they'd be, looming in the distance. So the woods are this overall presence that just kind of weighs on especially the younger students there. And there's all sorts of horrible stories about things that have happened there. A girl who escaped, or didn't escape, but fled the school and then wasn't let back in, so she died in the woods, and now her ghost haunts it. A boy who ran off into them, and his body was found 2 days later with his hands and feet chopped off. So there's really just horrific stories of what happens there. And you might be thinking, okay, so this is just, ghost stories. We all tell ghost stories. Just about everyone's hometown has a haunted place that you're not supposed to go. But this seems to go even further. In fact, the woods are also this form of punishment. There's one section of the story where they talk about Marge Kay, who did something really embarrassing, and to punish her, Kathy and her friends held her against a window at night and forced her to look at the woods, twisting her arms so her eyelids opened until she was sobbing all night in terror just because she had to look at the woods. So this is quite freaky, these woods that surround Hailsham. So what's going on with them? Are they there to keep the students safe? These stories, like how they used to tell stories like Hansel and Gretel to keep you out of the woods so you wouldn't wander off and meet danger? Are they there to keep them trapped? Or are they just a bit of fun? Who knows? Either way, the creepy factor of Hailsham is starting to build between Madame, the isolation of the campus, Miss Emily's behavior in the previous chapter, and now the woods. It's getting really creepy up in here. One last thing I want you to think about the woods is some of the symbolism that they represent. Now, I'm not the type of teacher to send his students symbol hunting, but the way the woods feature in this chapter and how much they're in there, they must symbolize something more than just the woods. And here's my theory, is that the woods work as a symbol for a greater fear that is out there, a looming fear that hangs over the school and everyone at it. And just kind of bookmark that idea, and we'll get to that in later chapters. So as interesting as the woods are, the predominant focus of this chapter is on Ruth. I think Ruth is really easy to dislike, but what's interesting is that Kathy doesn't dislike her for all the rows she has with her and all the times they kind of butt heads. They remain friends for years after school because they're reflecting back on this from their room in Dover. So why is it that Kathy remains friends with Ruth? Well, Ruth has a very active imagination as a child, like most children do, but maybe even more so for Ruth. She's a dreamer. And I think that's an attractive quality in a person, that you want to be around people that have big dreams, that are ambitious or excited by life. And Ruth certainly is. She has the game with the made-up horses. She leads this secret group to protect one of the guardians, but sometimes her imagination gets the better of her. And what's perhaps more frustrating is that she's boastful in her imaginative ignorance. This is most on display with the incident with the chess set, where Kathy believes Ruth is an expert chess player because Ruth pretends to be one whenever they walk past a game. But when Kathy gets a chessboard, Ruth won't teach her how to play. Now we know, and Kathy knows now, that that's because Ruth doesn't know how to play, but rather than just admit that, Ruth makes up the rules based on the knight moving like an L, and as Kathy is playing this way with Ruth, Ruth tells her that she's doing it wrong so that Ruth still wins over Kathy. So she's boastful and ignorant at the same time. And when Kathy calls her out on this, Kathy is then kicked out of the group by Ruth the very next day. So she is exacting in her revenge. Kathy's missteps are punished within one day, and the punishment is swift. And yet, when Kathy is with another student who is also punished by Ruth about a month earlier, she refuses to talk bad about Ruth, even though this other student is in the right in calling out that this secret protection agency is full of crap. She refuses to talk bad about Ruth, even though she can't quite figure out why. But everyone has a breaking point, including Kathy, and Kathy's breaking point comes with the pencil case incident. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire incident because if you read the chapter, you already know about the pencil case. They talk about it a lot, but basically, Ruth gets this pencil case, most likely at the sale, but she says that it's not from the sale, or more leads people to think it's not from the sale, and instead kind of steers their suspicions that it might be from Miss Geraldine, that Ruth is getting special treatment from one of the favorite guardians at school. And Kathy basically figures out a way to check the register of the sale, or bluff that she has, and prove that Ruth is full of it and that Ruth is lying. And Kathy's kind of in the right, I would say. And yet, at the end of the story, the end of the chapter, Kathy has a very different perspective on how this whole thing has gone. Listen to this. As Ruth is near tears, Kathy realizes all of this effort, all of this planning just to upset my dearest friend. So what if she'd fibbed a little bit about her pencil case? Didn't we all dream from time to time about one guardian or another bending the rules and doing something special for us? And it's that dream that I think makes Ruth such a close friend for Kathy, even though Ruth does things that would make other people, most people, dislike her or be turned off by her. Ruth is full of dreams, and as I mentioned earlier, that's something worth hanging on to. In the end of the chapter, Kathy lets her pride go for Ruth's sake, and she gives up truth and fairness. She's learned a key lesson, really, about the murkiness of the world, and that sometimes it's worth keeping a dream alive even when it's untrue. That's a lesson to hang on to as we continue reading. Thanks so much for sticking around for Chapter 5. Hope to see you in Chapter 6. Hope you're reading. There's a link in the description to get the book if you're not getting one. I say this a lot, but please don't take these videos as your only form of reading the novel. It's absolutely fantastic, so read it and come here when you need extra help, okay? Happy reading, and I'll see you next time.